Oh, hey there. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to my desk. How did you get here? Never mind, that's not important. I'm glad you're here. Hey friends, thank you for joining me at the desk today. I'm so glad you get to be here. Today I'm going to give you an editing breakdown of my new award-winning short film, Exit Interview. If you haven't seen it yet, you can watch it here. It'll make a little more sense if you've seen it. It's only like 12 minutes long, so make sure you go watch it and then come back to here. This was a 14-page script that we shot in one day with a crew of about 5 people total, so thank you so much to everyone that came out and helped. I can't thank you all personally, but you know who you are. Thank you very much, and check your inbox because I billed you for catering. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the editing project. Here's the full timeline. You can see it's all color-coded with a lot of audio layers and really only 3 video layers, but we'll just kind of go through the whole thing. I turned the color grade off because I still have a 2019 Intel in my computer, and I'm not trying to blow up the tri-state area. Starting off here, we have this incredible new logo that our friend Emily did for me. Shout out to her because it all came out just incredible. Then you go to the title card, Exit Interview. Now, I've intentionally put exit in red to look like an exit sign, which I feel like was obvious, but I felt like I should have said it. This is Gavin right here. You know Gavin if you listen to any of my music on Jackson Glass on Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere. It's 2 a.m. I want a chocolate milkshake. While he's an incredible audio engineer, he's also an amazing actor, and he'd never been in a short film before this, but he had 10 years of like theater experience, and so I was like, ding, 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 ding. While I could have cast someone a little more air quote experienced in film acting, I felt like me and Gavin had a really great understanding of each other in a way that we could pull off being childhood best friends better than I could have with someone else. And it was a really interesting thought experiment of like, what if a relationship had an exit interview? And this is something that I have done before, and this whole story was based on a lot of experience I had in high school and a little bit of college, and so it just really hit quite hard for me. And if you're someone that has been around of narcissistic people in your life, you understand how incredibly exhausting that is, and so for me as an actor, this was very therapeutic to be that character. And I was like, it's my turn. There was some Jared Leto method acting going on here. I was the absolute worst to work with on this film. That's a joke. It was actually really hard to say mean things to Gavin, and I ended up apologizing after almost every take. So here's where we get our first time card, and this is where the characters meet at camp. And originally in the script, they were going to be in a cabin and supposed to be like that camp feel, but the cabin we were gonna shoot at was locked, and so when we went the day before to check it out, it was just locked and we couldn't get in. So while me and Nick filmed this noir sequence, Gavin went upstairs and he just put together this entire tent, and I was just like, bro, this is awesome. And turned out a lot better than I kind of expected because this wasn't the original plan, but originally this was supposed to be like shot like in a Wes Anderson style, which I think was kind of conveyed. I think if we shot it over 2 or 3 days, we could have put a lot more effort into that. I don't think it really conveys that super well. But that was one of the many things I learned on this shoot, was that the styles that I was trying to convey could have hit a lot harder if we shot over multiple days. I'll also admit that I kind of fell into the trap of that a lot of people do, where if something is center framed, it's Wes Anderson, which is not true. There's a lot more nuance to Wes Anderson's style than just being center framed. And in hindsight, a lot of Wes Anderson films just have insanely high production design value that I just didn't have the budget or time to do, so maybe I should have just picked a different style. And so even if it doesn't convey that style perfectly, I think it still works as a scene. I think one of the funniest parts of this entire film is these obviously photoshopped pictures of us in the mountains. And what's so funny is we took these pictures right outside the building that all of the tent and the exit interview scenes were filmed in. And we just went outside, and Nick took out his phone and he snapped some pictures of us. But we somehow managed to shoot this film on the coldest day ever. So if you look on this picture here, there's obviously some wind blowing on us, and it's like 30 degrees in this high winds. So we were just absolutely freezing taking these pictures. Like, how on earth did we manage to shoot on the coldest day ever? Like 2 days before, it was like 70 degrees. And then the second we press record, it's like, welcome to the Himalayas. Moving into 2015, we move forward in the story to follow these characters through their friendship and how, you know, they see each other at camp every year, but they're also like in constant communication, playing Minecraft, hanging out, that kind of stuff. It doesn't fully show in this frame because of the way I'm sitting, but I am wearing a shirt that says "Wake Up, Gritty, Repeat," Shout out to Trey Kennedy for some incredible merch because dang, this is hilarious. Technically, canonically speaking, the gritty wasn't a huge thing until like 2017. But also, if your biggest nitpick about a film is someone wears a shirt that's technically incorrect, I think you did something well. Just going back and forth, you can see the color coding on these scenes because this scene is like still kind of that middle school era right here, even though it's split up into two. My part was shot just in our dorm room, and then Gavin's part was shot at my grandparents' house, which is what we're about to go to in this high school era. I apparently moved around some assets in this project, and so the background on this is not loading. It's a really, really great practical effect, guys. It looks really good. I had this idea of like using the alarm clock as the time code pretty early on in the script, and I was really hoping it would come out. I think it looks pretty good. And when it played during a festival, like that came on, and then everyone just kind of went, ooh, ooh. And I was just like, you know, if you're a filmmaker, you understand when people like audibly react positively to something you made, it's just a weight off your shoulders. Here we are. This is another one of my favorite parts of this entire film is just me crawling through the window. We have some incredible bloopers of me just going in and out of this window. And we knew this scene would have to be filmed at night. And so it was the last thing we filmed that day. And I think it was like 8 p.m. We shot this entire thing on one Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And so by the time we got to this scene, we were really delirious. From a writing perspective, this is my favorite scene in the whole film because there's just so many random jokes that are just out of nowhere, and I think it's so funny. Had to do some audio leveling here, which is to be expected. On the topic of audio, one of the main things I learned on this film was make sure your actors say the right name. These interview shots of me and Gavin are literally the last shots of the day. And Gavin gets up there, and he's been doing amazing all day. Like, I'm so happy he was there. So Gavin gets up here, and we've been going all day, and everyone's kind of exhausted, and we're hungry. And he gets up there, and he goes, look, James is my best friend. Gavin is James. I went through 2 entire drafts of this film before I realized he says the wrong name. This clip of me messing with the lamp wasn't in the film. It was kind of an extra scene that we just filmed because we thought it was funny. It was never meant to actually go in the film, but it ended up being my savior because I could hide the cut of a voiceover of him saying Thomas is my best friend right here. We spent like 45 minutes trying to fit the room tone of this scene just so that it didn't sound like the Thomas is my best friend line was in a studio setting. I thought it was going to be as easy as just adding some room tone and a reverb, but no, there was some audio wizardry going on here. And I think we pulled it off pretty well, but I really learned here is how incredibly useful it is to have an audio guy on your team. I think it's really easy as a creator to really pour into your camera gear and be so important about the cinematography and the way it looks in that, when in reality, audiences will pick out bad audio way easier than bad visuals. Not to say that you shouldn't care about your visuals, but they're equally important. When I was editing this film, I was really terrified because I felt like it wasn't coming to life like I wanted it to. And I was like, I don't feel like the different visual styles are selling. You know what the final piece of the puzzle was that made it feel real? Was audio. I'll get to it in just a second, but this entire sitcom sequence felt so dull without the laugh track. Have you ever seen those videos where they take those episodes of Friends or The Big Bang Theory and they just cut the laugh track out and it looks like the characters are absolutely insane?
I tried attacking 2 women, did not work. It's okay. I mean, they're my friends.
That's kind of what the sitcom scene felt like, and I felt like it just was not what I wanted it to be. And then I added the audio and was like, oh, praise God. Going back a little bit, one of the scenes of us talking here, I feel like is one of the most underrated lines of dialogue. And we quote it all the time because we think it's so funny.
But this is high school. This is real life.
This is high school. This is real life. It's so incredibly cringy. If you're in high school and someone you know is talking about moving away, it is the end of the world. As someone that moved a lot in high school, this line was like actually really important to me because it really highlights how absolute these characters feel. There's just so much immaturity here that it's painful. But this is how I felt in high school, and I was like, I need to capture this. I'd also be remiss if I didn't talk about the transition sound effect. I looked for a long time for a sound effect for this that would work, and I just didn't find one. So what I did was I opened Logic Pro, and I opened a MIDI grand piano, and I literally played a C minor 7 chord, and then reversed it. It's that easy. This file is literally titled Reverse C minor 7. You know, through editing and different viewing parties and stuff, I've seen this film like 50,000 times at this point. But the reverse C minor 7 sound effect gives me anxiety every single time. I literally feel myself tense up because it's like the anticipation of a change. And then like the second you feel like you're gonna you're bracing yourself, and then it just it's cut right like that. Which was very intentional, just to highlight how abrupt change is growing up. One day you're at camp with your best friends, and then suddenly, boom, you're in high school, and then boom, you're in college, and then you blink and you're like, oh my gosh, I've never evaluated this relationship. Everything just becomes so normal to the point where you never really consider what's going on, and you become blind to their flaws. Which was kind of surreal because it was a very unintentional callback to my first short film, Grandma's Garden.
When you love someone, sometimes you're blind to their flaws. And when problems aren't addressed, that means that it can come out all at once, and that leads to people saying and doing things they don't mean to do.
I don't know. I think it's really interesting because when you watch big time directors like Christopher Nolan, Wes Anderson, Brad Bird, all their movies have a consistent theme. Brad Bird is really good at doing movies about really unexpected, exceptional characters, while Wes Anderson will comment on different class divides in a really quirky style. So it's really weird to see that in yourself too. As I slowly build my voice as a filmmaker, I realize the things I'm truly passionate about will always come through in my storytelling. Moving on to the next scene, we're moving into the sitcom portion of this. I think if we had more time, I would have wanted to explore the sitcom intro song a lot better. I originally planned to write a song for this. We wanted to make and sing a song about them, and it was just a time constraint thing. It wasn't gonna work. As you can probably tell, all of the sitcom intro shots were shot within 15 feet of each other. It's all in the same room, which is so wild because this is the exact same spot that I shot an entire miniseries for my friend Austin, or The Idol Factory, when he released a new album. That whole series is still up on YouTube, and I'm actually still pretty proud of it. But again, it's weird. The more stuff I create, the more consistent themes and reused jokes I see. This is a side tangent, but I think this is why it's so important to create things. If you're in college and you want to be a filmmaker, hey, guess what? You're a filmmaker. Make films. Yes, it's really important to build knowledge through, school and YouTube videos and books and, all of that. I love that. But shooting this entire film, I learned so much, and am so excited to go into another film and apply all that I learned and make it even better. Doing practical work fast tracks your learning like you'd never believe. Anyway, with that side tangent over, here I am, just straight up parroting the Full House intro. You can look at this timeline. There is a lot going on here, and this was not supposed to have a lot going on here because I think the weakest part of this film is the audio of the sitcom scene. We shot it on the studio on campus, and while I really liked the way it looked, it achieved the sitcom feel. Audio in this room was really hard. We tried a lot of different things with a lot of different boom pole positions, and I think the final choice was to put it right under this bench. We tried a lot of different things, listened to a lot of different audio, and this was just the best one, and it was kind of the lesser of two evils. It was really hard to not get it in the frame because we needed so much vertical room because I'm so tall. One of the hardest parts about film that they'll never talk about in school is filming people with height differences. Look at this height difference. We had to have so much headroom, and we couldn't use the boom right here because I'm so freaking tall. But if it was above me, then you couldn't hear Gavin. Anywho, this also took a while because we had to shoot a fake multicam because we only had one camera. This whole film was shot on the red Komodo 6K, which is not my camera. I borrowed it from work. The second that the film turns is right here when Gavin says this line.
Don't do this in front of them.
So I'm going to take a second to tell you my intention on this film. Whether it was conveyed well or not is up to you as an audience member, but this was the intention. This film is shot from the perspective of James, and that is established with his voiceover at the beginning.
Sometimes I wish I could watch a montage of me and my best friend's greatest moments.
That's why his relationship with Thomas is so idealized. He's not realizing kind of what's actually happening here, and Thomas is being a bad friend.
You know what, Greg? You're not a good friend.
I even subtly added a little bit of gaslighting at the beginning of this film.
You're crazy. That's not what I said.
And then they go into high school where Thomas continues to be a bad influence on him. But then the perspective of the film then shifts to a third party member as you go into this documentary style. The audience is then put into a really awkward third friend position where you have two friends complaining about each other to you, and you don't really know how to handle it. That awkward third friend perspective continues in the sitcom as you become the audience laughing. Not really sure how to handle this, you just kind of start laughing like, oh, that's fine, they're best friends, they're just kind of, messing around, it's fine. Boys will be boys. It's not until here in the sitcom scene where the trust is broken between James and Thomas because James told you, the third friend, how bad Thomas's family actually is in one of the most brutal line deliveries I've ever seen.
I mean, his dad isn't a bad guy, but you'd probably cover your drink if he walked by.
James then acknowledges how awkward it is for you to be in that third position by saying, don't do this in front of them. That's when the laugh track ends and you realize how incredibly serious this situation actually is. You stay in that awkward third friend position until we switch perspectives once again in the noir sequence. Now we get Thomas's perspective on the whole situation through his noir monologue, where he talks about how pride and truth are not very good dance partners.
Pride and truth are not very good dance partners.
The irony here is the pride he's talking about is James. He thinks that he is in the right and he can do no wrong. This is a very standard trait of just crippling narcissism. But there is still a little bit of light in his monologue where he's back and forth trying to figure out if he's actually in the right. Part of him feels like he can't go back. He has to stick to his guns because he's just too far gone. It's at this point where he sees James again and he just completely drops any of the empathy that is in his mind. The way I look at it, this final scene where Thomas is chasing James through the hall, this is still from Thomas's perspective. He's incredibly pissed off because he thinks that James sees him as a monster. He's just gotten so in his head and projected so much onto James at this point, he just thinks that James hates him. But at the very end, through James's final monologue, we learn that he doesn't. Both characters really screwed up, but James had the maturity to know that they could probably work through it if they wanted to. But since Thomas didn't reciprocate that, he had to just kind of let go. I didn't intend to go through a full plot breakdown of this film in this video, but there you go. If you wanted it, there it is. I think I lied when I said that the sitcom was my favorite scene because I think this scene of me chasing Gavin through the hallway is maybe the coolest thing I've ever shot. I think I understand why people make horror movies now because I'm like, this was just kind of fun. This is when we start cutting back and forth from the exit interview to him in the hallway. This is where it all comes together because this scene in the room is James' perspective, but this scene in the hallway is Thomas's perspective. And so while it's cutting back and forth from these two entirely different scenes, they're the same conversation. It's just how different characters perceived it. I was so excited when this kind of match cut sequence worked really well. I think it just adds to the climax of the film, and I'm really happy with it. At the end of the day, you could make some kind of cornstarch, red food dye, blood compound, whatever. Ketchup worked great. Also, under this red light, the ketchup looked pretty good under the red light specifically. This was, funnily enough, maybe the hardest shot was the overhead of him being dead. I know this comes to a shock to a lot of people. I am not in perfect physical condition. I don't know if you know this, holding a heavy camera over your head for 5 minutes hurts. I woke up the next day very sore. And then I quickly cut together a lot of the videos that me and Gavin have from our last 2 years of college. And that was another really great advantage of using a real friend for this role, was because we had a lot of footage of us together before, and so we didn't have to go shoot a huge sequence before. The part that gets me the most in this entire film is this final scene. It's not really specified how much time has passed. It's kind of up to your own interpretation. While it could be a month later, also, James is wearing this dad hat now. Maybe it's 10 years later. And I think the subtlety in Gavin's performance here is actually so good because of the way that he looks around. Like this initial look, he knows that Thomas is there. He tries to avoid it. He looks the other way. He's like, oh, I don't see him. And then he's accepting. He goes, I have to say something. I have to wave. And then they just kind of wave at each other, and that's where they're at. And then they move on with their lives. This is just incredibly heartbreaking because you followed them from the very beginning, and they used to have a lot of fun together, and now they're not even speaking. Looking over this whole film, I'm really happy with it. I'm really proud of it. I think it turned out really great. We all kind of decided that 14 pages is probably the max that we could shoot in a day. And even then, a lot of little stuff fell through the cracks just because of the time constraint. Really loved to have been able to figure out a great audio setup for the sitcom scene. I really loved to not be so tired that we accidentally say the wrong character names. I would have loved to find a location that actually looked like a Wes Anderson film and not a random tent upstairs in a meeting room. At the end of the day, it all came together and I'm really happy with it. And more importantly, I learned so much. I don't want to dive too deep into what I learned because I think it could be a whole nother video, but I'm so excited to keep making short films and just kind of continue growing. While I really loved the film we did last year, Grandma's Garden, this one, Exit Interview, is just miles ahead of it. And I'm really, really excited to take what I learned on this film and apply it to another film and see what kind of stories we can come up with. A lot of the things I would have changed are things like that, where it's like just due to budget or just time constraints we just couldn't do. I don't really know where else to put this, and so I'm just gonna kind of put it here. We had a joke in the documentary section where the boom pole would like dip into frame, and that was just to kind of emphasize how crappy this documentary production is to like sell the style. But a lot of people didn't realize it was a joke.
Boom mic.
We got a boom mic.
It's a boom mic.
Like some of the judges on those festivals, like it was so unprofessional the way the boom pole dipped into frame. It was like, I feel like you should have done another take. And I was like, it was intentional. That was the joke. I had people texting me like, was that intentional? I'm like, yes. Do you not think I would have done another take? I think that's really funny. And I'm not going to be the guy that's like, I just have a more advanced sense of humor. You guys don't get it. Since so many people didn't get the joke, I could understand where the style changing wasn't extreme enough in the beginning to understand what was happening. Maybe we could have done a few more things in the documentary section to emphasize the style and maybe make the joke hit a little harder, but I just thought that was really entertaining that some people legitimately thought that I left it in. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Here's the full editing breakdown of Exit Interview. If you have any questions or you want to see anything else specific, please drop a comment down below. Thank you so much once again for joining me at the desk. If you like what you see here, make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and drop a comment down below. I'll see you in the next video. Say hi to your mom for me. Bye!